Hey all, Salman here. I've got 41 Microsoft certifications as of this video. Currently I'm interning as a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, and I'd like to share with you how you can pass a Microsoft exam with just a day of preparation. This isn't a method I've seen anyone else share, so I hope you do enjoy and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, so Microsoft exams, they are very highly regarded in the industry, and if you knew how many messages I get on a daily basis to work for companies as a senior or leadership position, then I'd think you'd perhaps reconsider whether you think certifications are worth it or not. The salaries, if nothing else tempts you, are very, very competitive to say the least, and what confuses me even more is that I clearly have on my profile that I'm an intern. It's in my header, and everything on LinkedIn that I put out pretty much says I'm an intern, and these offers still come in. I guess if nothing else, it shows how much weight these certifications carry, and what drives me isn't the inbox of messages or salaries though. If what drives you is learning just like me, then I do not need to convince you anymore. Okay, so let's get started, and to caveat, you can apply these methods, the study method, even if you're planning to study longer than a day, and any cramming method of any kind I stray away from is my advice, because I'd highly advise taking your time, and it's better to learn over a longer period of time rather than just a day, since then you're cementing your knowledge long term and not just trying to learn for one day and then forgetting it next week. Okay, so but you're here anyway, and I've sort of used this over the past year, and let's just get started. So let's together go through an exercise where we look at one of the hardest Microsoft exams, the AZ303, which I passed back in January. Okay, so my number one thing I like to do when starting to explore any Microsoft exam is to go to the exam page, and this step here determines whether I need to study longer than a day, whether I need to spend a few months, or not need to study at all. Not many people know this, but if you scroll down on the exam page under the bold text which says skills measured, you can actually find the skills outline, which is a PDF document which pretty much outlines anything that could be on the exam. This skills outline is essentially your bread and butter. So in theory, all you need to do is to understand everything in this document, and then you know enough to pass, right? It's very simple if you think about it. So what I like to do is briefly go over each bullet point, and whilst going through each bullet point, I like to ask myself, hey, do I know what this means? Do I know, for example, how to configure Azure Files and Azure Blob Storage? Do I know, for example, how to implement Azure Dedicated Hosts? If I know straight away off the top of my head that I know that, if I can visualize it in my head and know it inside out like the back of my hand, then it's not something I need to look into any further. But just as in life, every point matters, and every point / question can be the difference between, passing or failing. So even if there's a small inkling of doubt in my mind, I like to just copy and paste the term into Bing, or if you prefer Google, to Google that term, and as amazing as the Microsoft documentation is, it normally comes up with exactly what you need to learn. Okay, so here you can see a documentation page after navigating a bit after the first query within the Microsoft documentation. You can see this section on how to implement Azure Dedicated Hosts, and I can choose whether I want to see how to implement it using PowerShell, the CLI, or the Azure portal. So right now, if I didn't know this stuff, I would go ahead and study this. Okay, so walking myself through this skills outline PDF, I basically repeat this process. And if there's something I'm not sure about, say I don't know how to implement Azure Front Door, I will do a search of that term and get familiar, however long it takes. Perhaps it takes a minute, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. Maybe I need to message people to explain it to me. I'll do that. I'm invested in actually knowing long term how to use it, not just knowing the details to pass. And that's the hard mentality you have to, wrap your head around, because if you're trying to pass an exam in one day, you're probably going to skip over these details. So just try to struggle through it. And if you find it difficult, it will pay off in the long run, because if you struggle now, then it means it will be easier for you later. And I'm not just saying easier for this exam, but for future exams as well. And if you're a cloud solution architect like me, or if you deal with the cloud, you'll find your job even easier. So walk your way through this exam skills outline bullet point by bullet point, section by section. That's pretty much the advice I'd give you to pass a Microsoft exam in one day. For me, I've used this technique. One notable example was the AZ104, a very hard exam I took a few hours after the AZ304. Obviously, I have my study methods behind how I retain this knowledge and prepare for hard exams like this AZ303 myself. Perhaps I'll save that for another video, since this one is getting quite long. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. Subscribe and like if you loved it, and take care.